Sunday, March 19th, 1944. Dear Kitty, yesterday was a great day for me. I had decided to talk things out with Peter. Just as we were going to sit down to supper, I whispered to him, "Are you going to shorthand this evening?" "Peter?" "No," was his reply. "Then I'd just like to talk to you later," he agreed. After the dishes were done, I stood by the windows in his parents' room a while for the look of things, but it wasn't long before I went to Peter. He was standing on the left side of the open window. I went and stood on the right side, and we talked. It was much easier to talk beside the open window in semi-darkness than in bright light, and I believe Peter felt the same. We told each other so much, so very much, that I can't repeat it all, but it was lovely, the most wonderful evening I have ever had in the secret annex. I will just tell you, briefly, the various things we talked about. First, we talked about the corals and how I regard them quite differently now, and then about the estrangement between us and our parents. I told Peter about Mummy and Daddy and Margot and about myself. At one moment he asked, "I suppose you always give Weather a good night kiss, don't you?" "One, dozens. Why, don't you?" "No, I've hardly ever kissed anyone. Not even on your birthday?" "Yes, I have then." We talked about how we neither of us confide in our parents, and how his parents would have loved to have his confidence, but that he didn't wish it. How I cry my heart out in bed, and he goes up into the loft and swears. How Margot and I really only know each other well for a little while, but that, even so, we don't tell each other everything because we are always together. Over every imaginable thing. Oh, he was just as I thought. Then we talked about 1942, how different we were then. We just don't recognize ourselves as the same people anymore. How we simply couldn't bear each other in the beginning. He thought I was much too talkative and unruly, and I soon came to the conclusion that I had no time for him. I couldn't understand why he didn't flirt with me, but now I'm glad. He also mentioned how much he isolated himself from us all. I said there was not much difference between my nose and his silence, that I love peace and quiet too, and I have nothing for myself alone except my diary. How glad he is that my parents have children here, and that I'm glad he is here, that I understand his reserve now and his relationship with his parents, and how I would love to be able to help him. "You always do help me," he said. "How?" I asked, very surprised. "By your cheerfulness." That was certainly the loveliest thing he said. It was wonderful. He must have grown to love me as a friend, and that is enough for the time being. I am so grateful and happy. I just can't find the words. I must apologize, Kitty, that my style is not up to standard today. I have just written down what came into my head. I have the feeling now that Peter and I share a secret. If he looks at me with those eyes that laugh and wink, then it's just as little light goes on inside me. I hope it will remain like this and that we will have many, many more glorious times together. Yours grateful. Your grateful, happy Anne. That was from Sunday, March 19th, 1944, the Diary of Anne Frank. What that entry teaches us is to, be grateful for every moment because she's enjoying this little moment with her little romance with young Peter, but she's really grateful for it. And she ends it, "You're grateful, happy Anne," because at any time things can change, and you never know what life is going to throw you a curveball. So be grateful for everything.